Okay, so in this next chapter, we will be adding the next step in our game, which will be the north-south. Now, before we continue, I want to address the fact that each of these positions have their own pros and cons, as stated, but there's not a certain hierarchy. So the flow would be normal to go into north-south now, but you can go there anytime, and it's not a better position, it's just the flow and an upgrade. So we will be adding the north-south position in two ways, the low and the high north-south, as we will address them. We can go there from side control and from Ushiro Keskatami. So we've seen the side control. Now, as stated before, we can go proactively or reactively. As soon as Mats starts to escape, gets his frames in, I can block his hip, throw my other hand over, and spin towards north-south, switching my hips. The same could be from Ushiro Keskatami, where we ended up in the previous chapter. As I'm here, if I feel Mats turning me away, I'm going to be heavy on my hips, sprawl my legs out, and slide down towards this north-south position. Now, about the position, I'll be addressing the ribs and the twisting of my upper body later on, but for now I really want to focus on the leg work. So it's very important, especially in the beginning drill which we did with hands free, if I turn too much towards my butt, it's very easy for my partner to throw me over if my butt goes towards the floor. Same thing could be said about my legs. If my legs are together in a small base, I'm not covering much ground, I don't have a wide base. So now if Mats just maybe has two arms, he controls my upper body, closes his hands, get an ass grip, and then rolls me over, there's zero base for me, I will just be flipped over. So the thing that's controlling Mats here, that's preventing me from getting rolled over, is going to be my legs wide. Now, you can go with the toes, or just with the sole of your foot here, the top of your foot. As Mats now tries to turn me over, there's way too much base, yeah? I'm not that heavy, but I have such a good base, and my weight is distributed in a way that I control the pivoting to the left and right side. Now, on the upper body, for the north-south, it's important that you slide off as much as possible towards the head of your partner. Usually, we tend to think that the more body mass I control, the more I control my partner. But in north-south, that's not so much the case. The more I'm with my body on his body, there's no hip pressure, and I'm very easy for Mats to be bridged up, and there's a lot of space also between my hips for him to escape. So I want you to imagine sliding down, my hips are touching the mat, and my head is on his chest, and try to imagine later on getting my head besides his head. So that's very low. I'm controlling his hip, and my rib is turned ever so slightly into his cheek and into his neck. This will be important once we get to the submissions. Once again, the transition, as we've seen before, my hip will switch towards his head. So look, I'm in side control. As I'm switching to north-south, my arm could go under or across his arm. Doesn't matter if you have one or two arms in. If Mats is not yet escaping, usually his arm, this one on his right side, will be caught between my ribs and his head. I am blocking his hip. Now you can go with the hand, but the arm bends. My tip would be to put your hand on the mat and frame with your arm. If Mats starts to move, I'm blocking him completely there. You might notice from walking up with an arm triangle that if you have base on the mat, you're way stronger as opposed to just pushing with your bent arm. As I'm blocking, I am not going to sprawl out, because if I sprawl out first, there's a lot of space between us. So my hip is away. You will see that from a different angle in a second. Instead, my left hip is dropping on his face, as we've seen with Ushiro Keskatami. So I'm going into north-south, and I drop my left hip into his armpit and his face. Now look at his face and the positioning of his arm and armpit. Yeah, it's very uncomfortable, and once again, it's hard for him to bridge because his neck is compromised. From there, I'm sliding my ribs towards him. I'm turned towards my left hip, but not so much that my butt goes towards the floor and he turns me over and reverses me. So I'm sliding down with my ribs always pressing against his neck. This is where we settle in the north-south. If Mats would be in the process of escaping, then this arm is in between my hip and my hip will go over his hand and his arm will not be stuck in between. Later on, it doesn't really matter, but just show you the differences. If we're here and he gets his elbow in, if I switch now, watch the microphone. If I switch now, this arm is free. Yeah? Now it's just my ribs against his neck. So this is the north-south we'll be working here. We can do this from side control or once again from Ushiro Keskatami, proactively or reactively. Let's see it one more time. We're in side control. I'm trying to keep him here, trying to fight. I feel I'm losing the position. Instead of switching on this hip to Keskatami, he goes to escape. We're now switching over, dropping my head into north-south. If Mats does the correct response and turns his chin into me to prevent me from choking him on later on, then I can switch my ribs to the opposite side and put my right rib cage into his left neck to now have north-south on the opposite side. Once again, my legs are wide and I'm sinking in lower and lower into the position. So this is the north-south we will be working with from side control, from Kesugatami, proactively or reactively, controlling higher up my partner's body, his neck, and turning my hips into his face and into the side of his neck.